The vampire had a very important part in the mythology of the Maya. And not only did it play a big important part of their mythology, these demons had a crucial part in their calendar, their magic-based system, and their everyday lives. Thanks so much for coming to this channel, Mesoamerica. This is your channel where we explore Mesoamerican occult, magic, and the mythology of the people from Mesoamerica. Thank you very much, and let's go. The word for a vampire in Maya is kamasots, and the word for bat is sots. The relationship between these two words, it is intertwined in the fact that there is the sots and kamasots. Kamasots vaguely translates to son of a bat. But this is the first time we encounter these bat vampire type of creatures. We encounter them in the House of Black Smoke in the underworld or hell of Xibalba. Xibalba is definitely a place for demons. I don't know if we can translate into a type of Mictlan in the Aztec terms as a type of hell, but it's certainly ruled by demons, and the demons are taken off as lords by the context within the Popol Vuh. If you have any questions as to what is the Popol Vuh, I recommend you watch the previous episode on the vampires, where I make a small introduction of what is the Popol Vuh and how did it make its way into the Western world. But the Popol Vuh is a book of myths. I don't know if this particular book had any real stories as historical stories, particularly because they were filled with myth. They were filled with symbology. The Bible is also very much the same. For example, we have many people in the Bible that have many different interactions with their God. Isaac, for example, had a battle with an angel because he was demanding a blessing for this particular angel. And the story goes that Isaac battled this angel until the dawn. And during the dawn, then the angel gave up and he gave Isaac the blessing, and he became Israel. Now, the Maya had a very similar way of looking at life. In this instance, the two brothers, the Xibalba brothers, they were summoned by the lords of Xibalba, and in the many tests that they give them, they encounter the vampires, which are on the fourth house of the House of Smoke. Now, the number 4 is not coincidental. The number 4 is also seen in the Maya months. The 4th month of the Maya calendar is the month of Sots, of the bat. Now, it seems that there is a relationship between the stories of the Popol Vuh and the way in which the Maya saw their calendar. And these particular assignations also were not coincidental. They were very much a part of everyday life for the Maya. There have been a few archaeological discoveries of vampires in cups, or in statues, or in carvings inside of the cities of the Maya. And so the vampire definitely played a big role within Maya mythology and the way they saw their everyday lives. And now the reason why this is so important is because the Maya did not believe in a world that we believe today. The Maya believed that the world was shaped by the gods and it was somehow operated by the gods. And this becomes a little complicated because the view of the Maya gods is not like our invisible, very detached gods. The Maya definitely saw their gods as an intrinsic part of their everyday lives. They saw their gods in the stars, they saw their gods in their mythology, they saw their gods in the passage of time, in the somehow changing of the seasons. They didn't have snow, but they did have time to plant, a time to harvest. a time to when the waters were going to come. There are certain patterns in which rain comes into that southern part of Mexico and Guatemala. And so the Maya believe that all of these patterns were somehow regulated by their gods. And as a result, they also believe in that they could somehow manipulate the passage of time, or the way in which the seasons came, or even somehow when to get pregnant or when to harvest. So the magic of the Maya was intrinsic to their everyday lives. And so therefore, having the sots, the bat or the vampires as being part of their everyday lives, it brought a very great tool, shall we say, because they were able to summon the powers of the north. Of course, the bats and the vampires are creatures of the northern gods, and they were demons of the north. And as a result, they also utilize this type of symbol or archetype as a form of as a way to summon the powers of the north and the intrinsic symbology of the vampire and the creatures of the dark. Now this cup right here, it used to probably used by a priest or someone that summoned the vampires, and utilize the archetypal symbolism as a form of magic to try to summon a certain type of behavior or result. For example, this cup in this inscription, it says howler of the vampire of the bats of the north. Howling is a form of chanting, and chanting was very useful for the magicians or the conjurers of Mesoamerica, because if you watch one of my previous episodes, one of the practical magical instruments of the conjurers or the sorcerers, it was music, singing, sometimes very often a hallucinogenic, and smoke. So howling is probably a part of the magical ritual for the vampires. Now, this could be done by one person, or it can be done by multiple people. The Aztecs, for example, there were many people that played music before battles. And before battles, there was a magical preparation for the warriors to achieve a victory. And so they did magic before they went to battle. And so when we see this cup as the howler of the vampires of the north, we know that this particular the person that used this cup utilized it for some type of magical purpose. Now, the magical purpose of the vampire has to go hand in hand with the symbolism and the archetype of the vampire. The vampire, of course, is a creature of the north and of darkness. Now, if we try to simulate this with the Aztec symbology of, let's say, Tezcatlipoca or Mictlatecutli, we know that this type of symbology, it is dependent on its attributes, magical attributes. For example, Tezcatlipoca was the god of darkness, and it was the god of occult magic, particularly because magic is kind of underground. It's not supposed to be noticed. It's not supposed to be visible. And therefore, howling the creatures or the gods or the demons of the north, it meant that the practice that was being performed, it was supposed to be covert, and it was supposed to be done under the realm of darkness. And if we try to also use the symbolism of Tezcatlipoca, it also meant magic of seeds, or an embryo, for example, which was kept in the dark. And so it was probably to make a petition for the bats to try to, or the vampires to try to protect this particular embryo, or to protect this particular seed, for it to come to light, to protect it while it's in the darkness. And so the magical works of the vampires had to be really important for the Maya. Not only because we see it in cups and in other inscriptions, but also because it was part of their calendar. And so the calendar is kind of like our astrology of today, where many people think that there's a Mercury retrograde, and so therefore bad things are going to happen. Now, when there was the month of the vampire, of the vat, therefore darkness, something was happening underground that was not noticeable. Either something was going to be born, or something was going to come to light, but it was still in the darkness, or something bad was harvesting, or people or their psyche could have been attacked during the middle of the dark. And so if it's not visible, it was difficult to control. And so therefore the offerings to the vampires were very important, because people felt that they need to appease the creatures of the darkness so that they could be saved, or that they could be somehow spared from their power and from their own behavior of eating humans or behaving like some type of dark animal. Now, when the brothers Xibalba encounter these vampires, they perform certain actions to try to defeat the vampires. The brothers Xibalba, of course, had magical powers, and they were able to hide from the vampires as not to be attacked. And once the sun came up, they were able to defeat the vampires by running into the light of the sun, and therefore the vampires were not able to follow them. This was a trick done by the demons of Xibalba to try to kill the brothers, but the twin brothers. But the allegory here is that the vampire can be defeated, and it can be defeated by exposing it to the light. And of course, these can be somehow used ceremonially or magically to try to defeat the powers of darkness. One way in which we can somehow see this is by trying to give offerings to either the god, Huitzilopochtli, for example, or Quetzalcoatl, or Kukulkan, if you want to see it from the Maya perspective. And so this allegory of the vampire is certainly useful in some regard, but it also can be counteracted. If we are able to hide in the darkness, within even more darkness, and come out to light when there is light to make use of, then that is the way to defeat the vampires. But one thing that we can see here is that the vampire is king in the fourth house of the House of Smoke, or in the fourth month of the Maya calendar. And that is very important, because in our theology, God has power over everything. But the power of the Maya gods was reserved for a period, and it was counteracted by another period or another god. And so their theology seems to be based more on cycles, as it is in petitions, like our way in which we see our own theology by either praying or expecting miracles. For the Maya, it was a little bit more complicated. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Thank you.